Lord Hannon of King's Lynn.
My Lords, viticulture is one of the great prospects that we have in this country. In the last 2 years leading up to the lockdown, there was a 35% increase in the number of people employed by the sector. More of our acreage is given over now to the commercial growing of wine than at any time, certainly since the dissolution of the monasteries, and possibly ever. Wine producers are making a calculated gamble on a warming of temperature in this region. Not only is a lot of Kent and Surrey and Sussex and Hampshire growing as a wine-producing area, but traditional champagne houses are buying up land because they too are able to see the way in which temperature is moving. Now, as my noble friend the Minister says, this SI deals with effectively an oversight. In itself, it's a minor issue. What is not a minor issue is the question of geographical indications and how to get them right. One of my neighbours in Hampshire produces an outstanding English sparkling wine. I say outstanding because it wins every blind tasting. It is the only foreign sparkling wine served at the Georges V in Paris. Not the only English wine, the only foreign wine. And yet he, of course, has to get a name for it, a recognised brand that will allow him to charge what it's intrinsically worth abroad. And we need to be aware of treading the line between consumer protection and accurate information to customers and, if you like, barriers to entry. These classification schemes are often set up deliberately to be a racket. They sometimes have rather amusing anomalies. For example, Stilton can be produced, Stilton cheese, in half a dozen places in the East Midlands, none of which is actually Stilton, which is not in the area allowed to produce Stilton. It has to call it something else. Sometimes they are very obviously a racket. The most outstanding example within the wine trade, of course, being the 1855 Bordeaux classifications, from which you can't move down. So we need to have a response that is flexible, that guards against producer capture, and that rewards innovation and startups. My noble friend, the Minister, mentioned one of the trade bodies, Wine GB, and their Chief Executive, Simon Robinson, has a nice phrase. He says, "We will be the new world producers in the old world," by which he means we will be replicating the innovative experimental approach of New World producers, who, of course, are much less tied to the concept of the appellation contrôlée than is the European Union or the continental wine producers. So I hope that the government will take on board what the industry is calling for, which is that as we repatriate control, we shouldn't simply replicate EU rules on geographical designations. We should have a UK regime. But it should be a very light touch one. We should use it, what is it that the prayer book says of marriage? We should use it, we should approach it reverently, discreetly, advisedly, soberly, if soberly is the right word to use when talking about the wine industry. My Lords, if I may finish on a light note, did you know, my Lords, that it can only be called repartee if it is said in the Repartée region of France? Otherwise, it's just sparkling wit.